Necromunda Hired Gun is a game I was interested at launch, but hesitated to pick it up due to the many bugs and glitches on launch day. Fast forward to the year after its June 1st, 2021 release, and the game has been given some patches. However, there wasn't much in the way of post-launch DLC, which is shocking considering how one of the other criticisms was the lack of content. Still, is this fast-paced FPS set in the 40k universe worth playing? When you start up the game, you can pick your difficulty and pick how your character is going to look. I was actually pleasantly surprised that you will actually see your character from time to time. I picked the one with the braids because she reminds me of Aloy from the Horizon games. And speaking of looks, the game looks pretty good and has some absolutely gorgeous moments throughout. Most of this though comes when things are still, as the animations seem to be a generation behind. You'll notice this mostly in cutscenes with odd and robotic movements, as well as the audio being out of sync. Thankfully, the audio is solid in other parts and the soundtrack is pretty good, although not to the brilliance of Doom Eternal's soundtrack. It also doesn't help that the game will drop frames, especially in the final mission. I have this game running at 144 frames per second thanks to my shiny new RTX 3060 Ti, so it runs relatively smooth a majority of the time, with some noticeable random drops here and there. Given this is a fast-paced shooter, more frames are a huge benefit to the user. It's just so unfortunate that the final missions play so poorly, as almost like it was never finished nor fixed in post. The gunplay itself is pretty good, but does have some issues. The game is very inconsistent on how many hits it takes to kill an enemy. You'll see one enemy in the beginning of a mission and kill them in one hit, while the same enemy appears later on just to tank a ton of shots. The enemy variety isn't too high, so it happens more often than not. It only serves to artificially increase the difficulty and naturally increase my frustration. Also notice that I tend to drain health incredibly quickly, but once I am low on health, the enemy can't seem to hit me at all. While there are medikits that you can buy before missions, you'll mainly replenish health from killing enemies. As artificial as this system is, it makes more sense in this game having you keep up momentum, as slowing down can equal your death. Throughout levels, you'll find chests that contain new weapons to play with. While there aren't a ton of weapons here, what I did end up finding was pretty freaking awesome. You even get your hands on a bolter, which feels so satisfying to use, especially if you're a fan of the Space Marines. Others that I have enjoyed using included the grav gun known as Wrath. Killing an enemy creates a ball that absorbs all objects that explodes to a devastating impact. It led to some amazingly gory deaths, and even one where the blood of my enemies was dripping from the ceiling. Nice. Back to the levels, the design of them is honestly a highlight of this game. I'm personally not very familiar with the Necromunda and its Underhive, but the amount of verticality through a steampunkish world was just awesome to experience. This is attributed mainly to the grapple hook you'll get early on, which is vital to traversing these levels. It's also fun to zip around finding those chests as mentioned before. At the end of each mission, you'll get a score tally and can choose what weapons and items to keep with you. Items and weapons can go up to +3 in rarity, but for the normal difficulty, you'll mainly just find +1 and +2 items. You'll only have 5 weapons of each type, 4 items and 4 armors, but can carry 25 lucky charms and 24 tech augments. You're then taken back to Martyr's End, which is basically a central hub for you to continue the main storyline and accept side missions. This is also where you can upgrade your bionics, which I definitely recommend doing, as some of these abilities can be very helpful in battle. You can also give some to your trusty bull mastiff, but I kept them natural as I don't want to put any harmful mechanics in my dog.
I'm here for my mastiff.
Oh yeah, you got a dog that can attack your enemies with the press of a button. Early on, it's great to help kill enemies from a distance. After I got better weapons though, I ended up calling his assistance less and less. The enemies also get stronger with shields, as well as larger enemies appearing. Along with a dog and bionic abilities to take down enemies, you can also use a quick takedown move. This is when the janky animations are really at their peak. Some of these takedowns look good while others just look terrible, especially the way your character moves his or her arm. Either way, it's a great way to recover some health and conserve ammo. It's also very effective for tougher enemies, as one takedown is far more efficient than 100 bolter shots to the head. You can also customize your weapons. Unlike other games, there isn't really a straight path in making your weapons better, as each modification has a positive and negative effect on the weapon. I like the idea, but the execution could have been a bit better, since some of these modifications are very detrimental and can turn a powerful gun into an overpriced pea shooter. The story is nothing to write home about. Characters constantly get introduced just to get killed off shortly, which is a trope of really bad writing I can't stand. The ending was just very underwhelming and almost feels like a cliffhanger of a sequel that will most likely never arrive. It also goes against the lore in having one bounty hunter hunter, wielding the strength to destroy so many gangs in Necromunda. That part doesn't really bother me personally, but I can see it rubbing some 40k fans the wrong way. But let's get to the biggest issue I personally have with the game. The game itself is incredibly short, especially if you stick to only the main missions. Let's break this down using some basic math. There are 13 missions, which took me about 25 minutes each to complete. Multiply 13 by 25 and you end up with about 5.5 hours. If we bump that to a more conservative estimate of 30 minutes, we still only have 6.5 hours of gameplay here. Couple that with the lack of multiplayer nor any DLC and you'll be quickly done with this one, even if you enjoy the gameplay. And while theoretically you can just play secondary missions until your heart's content, these are unfortunately very underwhelming. They all take place on levels you've been through before, so there's really nothing new to see here. Most involve killing certain enemies, defending an area, freeing some captives, or destroying certain items. These also tend to be somehow harder than the actual main missions, as the game just loves to spawn 20 dudes right behind you who will drain your health with the quickness. I will admit though, it is a great way to get that cash money, boy. But man, these could have been so much more interesting. Maybe a procedural generated system like Bloodborne's Chalice Dungeons or Gunfire Reborn could have gone a long way for replayability. I'm sorry, but at its $40 price point, I just cannot recommend it. The biggest issue to me is just the lack of content after beating the game. Even with the DLC, all you get are some more cosmetic options. It's a shame though, since the base game is flawed but has its moments. I would say wait for a sale of at least 50% off, bringing the price to $20. Funny enough, I would honestly like to see a sequel to this game if the developer will learn from their mistakes, but maybe it's time for a different studio to take the reins. Thank you guys for watching as always. This is Powerhouse, signing off.